My name, I am Ita Greisdorf. They didn't show you when I was born, maybe we should. So, I was born in Latvia, and the city was Daugavpils, on the border with Lithuania and Estonia. So this is the Baltic Sea. So those are the Baltic countries, if you heard. I was born in 1931. Scary. So I was born in a family, my father and mother. And I was the only, my mother had a big family. She has another 3 sisters and 2 brothers, and my grandparents. And they all, I was the first grandchild, so I was showered with love and admiration, and you know, the first grandchild is the smartest and the nicest and the best. So that's what I was. And I looked a little bit, I had a resemblance. This is driving me crazy. Yeah. So this is me. And see, I looked a little bit like Shirley Temple with all this curly hair. And I loved Shirley Temple. I saw all her movies, and I was dancing like her and singing like her, so I was a lot of fun. So my father decided that I have a talent, and he decided to teach me music, piano. So he said, when I was 5 years old, he took me to a piano teacher to start, and I was very successful with this. And I supposed to be, as they said then, I will be a great pianist, which it didn't happen. So don't get excited. Yeah. So I supposed to play my concert, the first big concert, when I was 9.5. In 4.5 years, I was very progressed. And when I was 9.5, I supposed to play in September 1941. But it didn't happen. The war started the 22nd of June, 1941, and Latvia was invaded by the Nazis. I didn't know anything about the Nazis or about hatred or about anything. I didn't encounter this in our families. So I was coming to my grandparents to play with the children in the backyard, and they were different nationalities. And there was a Latvian family with 2 girls, and I was playing with them. And their father was a policeman. His name was Willis, which I never forgot, because this is the first encounter with hatred. He was Latvian. He came up to me when I was in the backyard, and with such a hate came up, you go home from here. And the children don't play with her. And I didn't know why, because they love to play with me. So I was very scared, and he nipped me very hard on my arm. And it was terrible, even I can't even think about him. So terrible. And he was probably already knowing or having news about Hitler and the fascists, and he was a real fascist, so he probably was waiting for Germany to invade Latvia. Then he would come to our house and take everything we have and kill us with big pleasure. He would love to kill us with his own hands. It didn't happen. So the war started, and people from Poland started to run through our city to whoever could run out from the occupation of Poland. And they started to tell terrible things what Hitler was doing, not Hitler, but his Nazis, his party. And Dr. Mengele, if you heard about him, and he was doing inhumane tests on people. He was just cutting them alive. And everybody was so scared in Daugavpils already. Everybody was only thinking about the Nazis are coming, the Nazis are coming, but they were not supposed to come because we were invaded in 1940 by the Soviet Union, so we were already a Soviet state. And Stalin had a pact with Hitler not to invade. They had a peace pact, but Hitler cheated him, and he made his own decisions and plan. So when Stalin even didn't think that he has to protect the borders, then he started the war, and he went like, like a thunder, fast, and it was going very fast. The first bombs started to fall in our city, and I thought that it's a lot of fun, because what do I know? What did I know about something like this or worse? I thought we'll watch in the window how men are beating up each other. That was my imagination of war. But bombs started to fall more rapidly, and we had to go to the cellars and stay there. Across the street we had a 3-story building, so we were laying in the basement, and a lot of people from the street were laying there with their children. The men were already mobilized, but the army was demoralized completely because they didn't expect anything, and they didn't have nothing to protect the borders. They had to run. But the first weeks, when they were already coming close to our city, my father was mobilized, and he was guarding the city on the city tower. One morning, he was kind of taking very, very quiet. So he started to call names of the people that were with him. Nobody was. He went down. He was alone. Then he understood that he had to run to save us, that the Germans are coming close. He came to the basement and he said, "Don't panic, take whatever you can, take your children and run. Run to the railroad station. Run to the freight station, because I heard that already the passenger station is in the hands of the Nazis, of the local Nazis." We had a lot of local Nazis that showed up. And my mom went to our apartment, and she had a loaf of bread and a bag of sugar. That's what she grabbed. And he stopped at my father's parents, my grandparents, and my father asked them to go with us. They said, "Why would we go? We're old people. Who will touch us? Who needs us? We didn't do any harm to anybody. Nobody will touch us." And he said, "We will be here and you run." So we hugged, we cried, and I didn't know that this is the last time I see my grandparents. So we started running. The streets were like a battlefield of things. It was laying all the way to the station, were laying open suitcases. And from them were floating out all kind of stuff, personal belongings and shoes and dresses and whatever, everything. And I couldn't understand why. So I said, "Why is everything on the streets?" My father said people packed their belongings to go away, but they had to run, and it was heavy. So they had to leave it. And they opened up to take something with them. But we didn't have nothing except the bread and sugar. We ran. And we came to the freight station. It was this cattle cars, and we started to go into the cattle cars. And there was a lot of people that ran with us, so everybody was going into the cattle cars. When it was already packed, my father went, he felt responsibility to do something, so he went to look for the locomotive driver, and he couldn't find anybody. So he went into the station and he found one hiding. He said, "Let's go start the locomotive." He said, "I'm not going. I want you to be here. The Germans will take you." So he was devastated. He ran out and he saw an officer, thankfully. And he said, "You have a gun?" and they went with the gun. He put the gun to his head and said, "You are going right now," and started train. And that's how we started train. The army, the officer, you can see that was just a disaster. Everybody was running. Nobody knew what to do. So we started the train, and it was not so fast because every little while already they knew that there is a train with Jewish people and children and old children and old people, and it's a train, and they were after to bombard us, to stop the train. So every time that they were coming to bombard, we had to jump out from the tall cars and lay down by the railroads, tied to the ground, not to be noticed, and that's how we were moving little by little. Next to me was all the time laying a little old man with a long beard, and when it started bombarding, he was always praying, and then always his stomach was going loose, and he was always a little creak by him. There is no toilets. We didn't have water. We didn't have food. We didn't have anything. We just had our hope to run. And we were going. No, it's again. Boy. No, this is a disaster. I don't know why you do. Okay. So we start here, and the train took us one night. We crossed already the Russian border, and the train took us to Kuibyshev. Today it calls Samara. They took off all the Soviet names and put the old names back on the cities right now after the Soviet Union was destroyed. So we were lucky, we could breathe. When we came already over the Russian border, people could go out on the stations to the toilet. My father got some tea kettle somebody gave him, so he was running for hot water, bringing to the people who couldn't go out. Some food was brought, was organized by the government to bring us hot soup, so it was much easier. And we escaped on a stop here, because not everybody was so lucky to escape. My mother's family, so my father's family didn't go. My mother's family started to run, but they went to the passenger station. And the passenger station was by the Nazis' hands. So they let them go in the trains, but they took them behind the city and kept them there. When the German took the city, they brought them back right in the hand of the killers. So it was my mother's. This was her mother, and this is my grandfather, and this. Let me see here, my uncle. Oh, here. He was 20 years old. And another sister of my mom's. I have it here. And she just had a baby. So they were all taken to the ghetto. The old people, my grandparents, they were not so old, they were in the 50s. So this considered to be old. They took him to the jail, and they were all killed the 7th of November. They were all shot down, like dogs. This I found out later when we came back. The younger people with the children they used to put them to work. But the little children, the babies, were not needed there. So they ripped out from her hands the baby, one or two of the Nazis, I don't know, and they just hit him with his head on a pole and killed him. So she could not take this, and she was probably yelling and screaming, so they shut her down and her husband. So this was the end of her. And my mother's brother that I showed you, he was 20 years old. He was engaged, and his fiancée, they decided that whatever it costs, they have to run, they have to save themselves, because or they will die anyways, or maybe they will save themselves. So they found a farmer that was coming and bringing some goods to the ghetto, and he agreed to take him out in his buggy under straw and under boxes. And the day came, and my uncle came, and she wasn't there, so he ran to look for her. He didn't want to go himself. And she came a little later, and she took the opportunity, and she saved herself. But he was still running. He didn't know he was running around the ghetto, and somebody told on him that something he is behaving wrong. So some of them, some of the Nazis went to look for him. So he ran into a toilet that was outside. That's where they were, the toilets. It was a hole in a board. He ran into there, and they went in. He had to jump into the sewer. So they shot him in the sewer, and that was his grave. So they were not so fortunate as we were. So we came to Kuibyshev. In the cities at that time, this was the start of the war, nothing was prepared for the war. And it started, so the government, Stalin started to mobilize everybody who he could, the women, the young, whoever could help, the older people, everybody had to work for the front. And in the cities was housing impossible, because there was never housing, always a problem with housing, and no food. So the refugees were sent to the villages, to the kolkhoz. This is collective farms. There they can work and plant for themselves everything you can plant, so you will have food and nobody has to feed you. That was the only solution. So that's how it was. They sent us to kolkhoz. We came to a little village. This little village was a poor kolkhoz, not a rich one. And it was very, people, for them was a very big event, even if it was not so far from a city. They never was in a city, but they never saw people from another world, Eastern Europe. This was another world. It was not Soviet Union. And especially Jews, because Jews were devils, and they were frightening the children. If they will not listen and they will not be good, the Jew will come and take him away. That's what they know about Jews, and the Jews have horns, I mean. And when we came, they brought us in a school, so the whole village came to see us. The children decided that they will take us out and check our horns. So they took us outside in the back, and everybody started to feel our heads, mine and my little brother. And I said, "Why are you looking in our head?" They said, "Where are your horns?" I said, "Which horns? We don't have horns." So after a while they saw that we are really people, children like them, and don't have horns. So we were accepted, and they were playing with us. In this, the living conditions were terrible. We didn't have where to live, and every villager had a tiny little house with 2 little rooms. So they had to take, and they put wherever they could. So we were in by a man, by the family that took us in, and we were sleeping in the front room on the floor. He put some straw. They gave us something like a blanket, and 4 of us were laying sleep there. This was our place. But water was a big problem. There was a little river. In the river, everybody was swimming, was washing himself, was washing laundry, and drinking the water. So as soon we start drinking the water, we got dysentery. And I got very sick. I almost died, and I had to be taken to the hospital. The hospital was a tiny house with 4 beds. No doctors, no medicine, just 2 nurses, because everything was mobilized to the front. I was very sick, but they were watching me. The nurses took very good care of me, and they tried to do whatever they can to save me, and they did. So after a month, I was very frail. My father brought me home, and he decided he has to ask the authorities to find another place for us. So they sent us to a bigger village. So we came to the bigger village, the same living conditions, and we didn't have food. The food, all villagers were the kolkhozniks, they were providing themselves, but we didn't have nothing to provide. So we had only the bread, because bread was rationed, and our ration was, I don't know how much, but it was bread, it was grain, and then my father had to take it to the mill and grind it, and then my mother could bake for us a piece of bread. And it was good if we could get in the fall a watermelon or a melon, so a piece of bread and a slice of melon was good for dinner. So he saw that we cannot live like this, and after a year and a half, he decided that he will take us. It was a very cold region. Kuibyshev is cold. The temperature can fall 35, 40 below zero winter, 40 Celsius. So my father decided that we should go in the warm lands to Tashkent, and this is Uzbekistan. And we started, there is no transportation, so he found a tractor, and the tractor had to take us to another village, so we would go from village to village in the deep snow. And we started out, and the tractor in the middle of the night broke, and we were in a steppe. I don't know how you call it in English. It's just flat land. There is mostly flat land. There is no, forests are very seldom, so you don't see nothing around. You see a wide, flat piece of land, nothing to look at, and a big moon, and that's all, and wolves. So my father saw that we can die there, freeze to death. He had to go and find somebody to save us. And my mother said, where will you go? But what is in the middle? There is wolves and nothing around, no one little light. He said, but anyway, we will die here, so I will go, maybe I will find help. And he did. He found help. Somehow God was, leading him. And he was using his matches from the wolves, and he had keys, so he was making noise, so they were not attacking him. And he came to a village, and he told his story, and in the morning, like 5 o'clock, it was still gray, I saw a horse with sleds coming to our tractor, and we were saved. So I see that we don't have too much time. So I'm doing it, cutting off a lot of things. So
when we came there, my feet were already frozen, and they did everything to bring my feet back to circulation, and they saved me. They were very nice and hospitable, and the head of the kolkhoz said, "You wanted to kill your family? You go to Tashkent. Tashkent is a big city with a lot of people were running there because there is no warm clothes, nobody has anything to wear, so you have to at least be in warm." And so people were dying from hunger in the streets, he said, and from typhus and lice. So you go back. So they brought us back, and we got another village assignment. And in this village was our savior, because it was a good kolkhoz. We had a lot of land. We got right away. It was spring already close, so we got land. We got 4 shovels, and we had to dig and work on the land. They gave us potatoes to plant. They gave us some grain to plant, and they gave us for vegetables. They gave us a house. This was the most important thing. We got a house. The house, probably the people were mobilized to the front, so we got their house. The house was 1 room and a tiny little place like a kitchen where it was the oven. And if you heard about the Russian oven, so this is a big deal, because this was not only an oven to cook, but it was extended to the room this high, and a big one. We were sleeping on the oven with my brother. This was a very good place because it was always warm. So, and that's how we had our life there. We didn't have clothes. My father was a tailor by profession, and they took him to organized shops, tailor shops, to make clothes, warm clothes for the front. And it was, he made a lot of, from village to village he was going, and he put up a very big industry of making clothes for the front, for the soldiers. But for us, it was not material to make some clothes. Yeah, they allowed to make for us warm quilted jackets and quilted pants. They quilted with inside with cotton. So this was for winter warm, and then we had made there in the village from lens wool felt boots. Felt boots, so they are up to the knee, but it was there. They call valenki calls. So for winter we were warm up to go outside, but for summer I grew up for my clothes. I came, so I just suffered a lot. All 4 years my feet didn't see shoes. I was always barefoot, and my brother. We always, wherever, and until real cold, I was always bare shoes. But to go to school, my father saw from overcoats, soldiers' overcoats, they were making, this is a thick material, so he cut out kind of shoes. He saw, like, I don't know what you can call it, shoes from material. But the material didn't last long. That runs all the time. So I was wearing it until the frost, but if it was raining, I had to bring them in my hands and put them on in school. So I was going to school there from the 3rd grade to the 6th, 4 years. After, in 1945, in May, the war was ended, and this was a big celebration for everybody. People came to the village for the main yard or this Platz, and listening to the radio. That was one radio. People didn't have home radios at that time. And in the kolkhozes. And they were saying that today, the 9th of May, is victory, and everybody was happy, but they were happy and they were crying because a lot of people, a lot of husbands and fathers and brothers didn't come home. So it was a very sad and happy celebration. So my father started to work on to get permission to go home. But we had to wait, it was not so fast, and in August only we got the permission to go home. And when we went home, when we had to go to he went to the city, he had to bring something for me to wear because I didn't have clothes whatsoever. I can't even figure out what I was wearing. He was making me probably from pieces of what was left over from all kind of pieces. I know that I had kind of shorts that looked horrible and something on top, a top. That's all I had. So I couldn't go to the city this way. So he went to the city to look for me for a dress and shoes, and for my brother and for my mother. And he brought me a dress. It was white with yellow flowers, which I didn't like. And it was small on me, but it was a dress. So I was proud to wear it. But the shoes I remember up to now, because they were so hard and so painful to put the feet in. I don't know where he got them. Like they look like they were soaked a couple years and then they dried out. So when you put the foot in, you feel like its needles goes into your feet. But it was shoes. So I put them on and we were on the way home. So we came home with nothing. We came to the kolkhoz with nothing, and we left with nothing. And when we came, we didn't expect. We came out of our train. Our city was in ruins. Daugavpils was ruined 75%. So only 25, which I was dreaming that I will come back to our apartment, I will take my clothes, put on, finally everything is waiting for me, my grandparents are waiting, so nothing happened. And when we are going farther and we see on some of the street was some houses. It was like, it used to be little shops on the street, so they were not, they didn't have, they were just one story, little shops. So we went there, a man was staying by the door of a little shop. We knew him, and my father said, how can I get somewhere to live? Where should I go? He said, you can't get anything to, so you came too late. And everything is taken. So he said, what should I do with my children? He said, you can spend a night or two in my shop. In the morning, he was a photographer. In the morning, you have to leave. But at night you can come and sleep on the floor. So it was not new for us to sleep on the floor, so we slept on the floor. And finally, finally my mother's sister got a room in a 2-room apartment, and we were 9 people living in this room for a good while. But I will not have time probably for more. So I want only to tell you that my story is maybe not a big story, but I'm telling the story because I want to bring a point that we as people have to stop the hatred between nations, between all kind of color people or religion people, because every people are made equal. And this is why I want to bring out that we have to be nice to each other. We have to open up our heart and be alert, not to let happen Nazism, even bullying. This brings to bad things, and that's why I agreed to tell my story.
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit. I just want to add a little bit to this. I want to read for you Patrick Dubois, Catholic priest, decided to find out by himself what happened, if this is true. Because if you heard or saw the movie Denial, that people were denied the Holocaust happened, and Hitler was very nice to the Jews. So he decided by himself from Paris, he decided to go with a group of clergy. He decided to go and visit Ukraine, Belarus, to see where the biggest atrocities were, to see by himself if this is true. And what he saw, he could not even believe what he found out. He did not tell the people that when he was interviewing them, he didn't tell them that he's writing it, was taping everything, and he didn't tell them that he will be against them. They thought that he is there on their side. It's a priest and not a Jew. So they told him what they did. And here what he wrote. In National Geographic, he wrote a book now. And he published on the channel National Geographic. But I want just to read a few pages of what he said. As a founder of the Paris-based Interfaith Foundation, the name means together, Yahad in Unum, that's how he calls it, his foundation, Hebrew and Latin. He's made those words his life's work. What he said, every killer saw his victim, every victim saw the killer. I lost something. DBS has made an enormous contribution by getting the location of these mass graves. But the value of what he's done goes beyond illuminating history, said David Marvel, director of New York's museum. Here, he said, this deceptively gentle interrogation often pay off as witnesses and their families divulge deeper details and sometimes secrets. We were in a village in the south of Belarus. He recalled, I asked one guy about a policeman who used to kick Jews in the ghetto. The guy said, you want to know the truth? This was my grandfather. And suddenly we got an intimate portrait of this very violent man. So this is, they did it. And then he said that he felt nauseous. It was nauseating about all what they told him, and they were kind of, well, they were proud what they did, and they thought that they will get his approval, good. So he said he was nauseous, and sometimes from horror his hair was standing up. That's it. So this is today. Is any question?
When did you come to the United States?
In 1973. So we came to Israel in 71 when they opened up the borders. They didn't open up the borders, excuse me, but we had permissions. You had to apply, you had to go through a scrutiny, and have to pay, and then you got out to Israel. And that's how we did. But we came to to America only because my husband had a brother here with a family. So he said, I didn't see you. He deserted the Russian army and ran over the border in I don't know, not in Yugoslavia, in Hungary. And then he came to Italy, and then he came here. He had here an end. So he said, I didn't see you for 35 years, and I want to have my family here. And I have a business, I cannot go to Israel to live. So we came here. So we live here already 45 years almost. Yeah, so I think we are more American than was there, but this part of my life is never will go away, and and I get nervous and upset when I have to speak. I don't know why, but I am reliving the thing that happened, not only to me, but all my loved ones. And when I come into the museum and I see this cattle car, I just don't look at this because I start crying. I don't look at this because this was for 2 weeks we were in this without toilets, without water, without food, and it was horrible for a child. Yeah,
You speak very well. You're a very courageous woman.
thank you. Thank you.
It's called post-traumatic stress disorder.
Ah, that's probably what it is, because from the morning already I get nervous, and I took tranquilizers, and I took another one to getting drink. I was doing everything is possible to calm myself down, and I was talking to myself, why are you so crazy? Calm down. I couldn't.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Holocaust by Bullets by Father Patrick Dubois, and if the gift shop's open, I think we carry it. It's a wonderful book, what you were quoting from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I wrote a book. Yeah, my book will be probably, maybe in January. My book will be more interesting than my speech. So I hope that it will come here. And,
Wow. These are
it's not a big book. It's not a big book, but it is a good. It is not difficult. It is a good book to read. A lot of information about the life in Russia in kolkhoz, and it's very interesting. Yeah, all the everything. So thank you for coming, because this is important that people come. They are interested in this. They take interest, and hopefully this will work for everybody, for all the nations.
The Holocaust by Bullets has a lot of photos.
Yes.
How did they manage to get those photos?
For the Germans were taking photos.
They were excellent.
They were taking photos of atrocity. They were proud. They were doing this. And I was in Auschwitz. I went in Poland to see Auschwitz. And I was sick up to today. You don't know what you will see in Auschwitz. You will see the real thing. And you will see that you are walking on bones, little pieces of bone. There is no sand or ground. There is all bones from the ovens that was it's the road from the gas chambers goes on those little carts, goes to on a little railroad, goes to the ovens that are just outside, and from the ovens it's not ashes. It does not burn to ashes. It burns to little pieces, and all the pieces, all the ground is bones. Yeah. So I was.
Thank you again.
the more you share your story, it can make you feel better.
Yes, I know, but
Thank
I'm
you.
doing it a lot.
Thank you so much. You're very good.
I'm trying to.
Yes.
You're mine whatsoever.
Yes, you are.
I will sign my book.
What's the title? I wish I had a pen.
The Shattered Dreams, my Shattered Dreams.
I already named it. Let me see our pen. We're all can have it. Very courageous. It's gotta be hard to do that.
It's very hard. The first days I was constantly crying because it's very difficult.
God bless.